Hear me, everyone? Yes? 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 Because I cannot hear myself, so that's great. So hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this wonderful adventure. Very, very happy to be in Tallinn. Actually, it's maybe my 17th time when I look at my calendar. So I think I know the city fairly well, but I know my secret spots in Tallinn. I'm really, really happy to share with them as well, like the coffee shops and little things like that. But I'm very, very happy to be here. Let me ask you something. Well, it's now 2026, right? Is AI still a thing? Okay, that's a strange question to start, right? But I think that it's very much still a thing. Has anybody already implemented AI in their products? That's okay, it's a safe place. Don't worry, it's like, if you didn't, that's also fine, right? What I'm interested in is not how many people integrated AI in their products, how many companies invested into AI, how many companies that set up with AI then in the end go to exit and make billions. I really don't care, to be honest. What I'm interested in is what people do with it. Specifically, when you ship features, AI features, right? I'm interested in how people actually use them, how people don't use them, where they abandon, where they cancel, when they move on, how they hack the system to make it work for them, right? And so what I'm actually really looking for is what do people actually do with AI? Remember that magical moment in 2022 when you experienced ChatGPT for the very first time? So we were promised the boost of efficiency of 100%, 200%, 300%. Did it happen? Do you feel like you're 300% more effective today? Some of you nodding, maybe 2 people. Just you need to build little group as well, right? But I want to really figure out what it means. But for that, we need to get started from the basics. By the way, I was told and asked by the wonderful organizers if I really have something like 700 slides. I do. And so we will be going through them, but not all of them. We need to start from the beginning of times, literally. This is the beginning of times for me. Does anybody remember this? Not old enough to remember this, and this is very good. This is the game that's called The Prince of Persia. And this is the game that I was playing non-stop when I was growing up. Literally non-stop. The game is very simple. You have 60 minutes. You have to save the princess. I never saved the princess. I never did because it was really, really hard to play. So you kind of go and you have a timer, and then you have to fight, and then you have to jump, and you have to find all the hidden secrets there and things like that. So I had to watch a YouTube tutorial to understand how this works. Now this was my beginning of my journey, and then this happened. Anybody remember this? This is the first website that I encountered in my life. Yeah, whenever you encounter the first website in your life, you really mark it in the calendar, right? Because you don't know what happens next. This website today is 36 years old. Some of you younger than this very website. If you look at it, this was the time before Flash, if you know what Flash is. This was Macromedia Shockwave, which I really loved, and I wanted to do all on it. Well, it's still kind of okay, maybe a little flashy. But if we move forward, we kind of get into the world where this happened. 2006, a tremendous innovation in my life, where all of a sudden I saw this website. This, if you remember this, like going all nostalgic, like all the way to the beginning of times, this is video text or teletext, I don't know what it was called in Estonia. And here, well, in the past, do you know how you would use it? On TV, you would press numbers. Yes, we liked buttons and we liked numbers back in the day. And so what you have here, you can actually navigate through the page by clicking on the number, numpad, and stuff like that. And this was really, really exciting time. This is the time when I actually really wanted to become a designer. And if we look forward, like these things have really evolved dramatically. Now we have a lot of APIs, data coming in real time. It's all fast, relatively fast, still quite inaccessible. We still have a few issues, but you can actually pull data from all kinds of sources, have 3D modeling, real-time visualization, and all of that. Wonderful, tremendous times. So why is it then that at the pinnacle of our life as designers, right, and product development, we still end up in the year 2026 where this is okay? Is it really the best we could invent in 25 years of doing this or more than this? And I know what you're thinking at this point, but we don't have this anymore, right? No, we don't have this anymore. It has reincarnated in a very different shade and form, which of course looks like this. And if you're like me, I take it very seriously. If somebody gives me a puzzle, I have to solve it well. So I sit down every morning when I go to authenticate or whatever, and I take a cup of coffee and I think, this, technically, I do want to get it right. So I really spend more time solving these puzzles than actually do the work, right? And then, of course, we have things like this that have not gone away. But then, eventually, we also get things like this. Whenever I get this, I just block. I just don't know what to do with my life. I know that whatever I choose, it will be probably wrong. This is the only thing that I know. But then, we do have innovation. And so we get this. And when we look into this, we feel like, wow, this is magical, right? Guess what? You have a text box. Wow, this is pretty cool, right? Text box on its own is a good innovation, I think. And you can type into that text box a question, and you wait. Waiting is great, right? You wait. On average, in the beginning of times, in 2022, you'd be waiting for something like 40 to 60 seconds to get a reply. That's a long time of waiting. If you press on the button elevator, and it just slowly starts telling you what a great choice of the floor it is. This is great. You're fantastic. You're going to the 5th floor. This is the best floor they have. Great for you. And by the way, let me show you how we're going to get to that floor. That's not necessarily a great experience because nobody wants to wait. So, and then you keep going because you get an answer. You have to kind of manage it in some way. And then you have to type again. And then you keep going in the loop. This actually is a remarkably wasteful experience when it's actually not well articulated in the beginning. So I'm working with the European Parliament. And one of the ambitions that we have is to find a way to bring 199 websites that we have under an umbrella of just one website, with AI or without AI, but of course there is a very strong desire and need for accuracy, for helpfulness, for trust. This does not come for free, so it needs to be carefully designed. So as a part of it, I had to do a lot of work, and also not necessarily with the European Parliament, also with other organizations, trying to figure out what that actually means and requires. So there is a lot of stuff I want to kind of explore briefly, kind of jumping in between. First of all, the state of things, of where we are. How do people use AI? Then also things like usability and what is happening under the hood. Design patterns and interaction patterns, specifically accessibility. Very often we don't think about this necessarily when it comes to AI. But when you just take an existing model, you plug it in a product as a feature, AI feature, well, it must work within the ecosystem in which you're operating, right? So if you're complying with the European Accessibility Act, AI features must comply with the Accessibility Act as well, right? And by default, it doesn't, right? Just because it's shared, it doesn't mean that it's a simple experience. It isn't. And then, of course, we're living in the world of agents floating around, trying to come up with ideas of how to ruin humans and humanity. So we kind of need to orchestrate it in some way and establish safeguards, guardrails around this as well, right? So what is happening? Right? So what is happening in this world of AI UX? Well, it's first of all very important to understand that we moved quite far away from this. We forget about this because we're using interfaces like this every day, but we moved quite far. We have incredible tooling that looks very different than ChatGPT. So what do we know? Like this is a tool that's called My Mind. On My Mind, you just bookmark whatever it is that is important or relevant to you, and then it tries to identify any kind of little details that go into that thing. So you bookmark it. It tries to decode everything, the texture, the architecture, the connections, the authors, the colors, the everything, right, to create the sort of notion of relationships, and then you can query that. That's nice. You never have to tag it. You don't have to categorize it. It's just there, really understanding what it is that is in front of it. Now, what it allows us to do, of course, is something quite remarkable. You could say, find something like this, literally, without actually articulating what that really is. So this is the tool that's called ImageGen. So you click on, let's say, one of the images. Based on these relationships it has identified, it tried to provide or show you examples that are similar to this. If you had to articulate it on your own in human words, that would be very challenging. But if you look at this, can you see some relationships between all these images? Maybe, right? So you could say, well, maybe not much, right? But that depends on how you actually treat it. But in the eyes of AI, there are relationships between it. But again, we went quite kind of much further than that. This is one of the tools that is really quite impressive on its own, which is called Flora, where you basically have this node engine. You probably have seen it, maybe Figma has acquired Weavy recently, where you can say, I have this as input, I want to push it through a bunch of prompts to generate something else, like a video or another image or something like this. And typically it would look like this, right? You have the input, this could be visual, could be video, could be audio, could be anything. And then, of course, you go and you write a prompt. Usually you wouldn't even write that prompt, by the way. You would ask AI to write that prompt for you, because AI is so much better at this. But you basically have this UI that allows you to create these chains and logic and this basically systems, literally, with which you can generate something. Now, of course, we're talking about generative AI here. So as you go, let's say, from one place to another, instead of writing a prompt, because who would write a prompt in 2026? That's just so 2022. No, you ask AI, can you please, extend it, make it more exciting and, dynamic. So off it goes, and it generates a prompt for you. It takes a while, because we're used to waiting, right? That's great. And then you plug it in. Would you be able to write a prompt like this? Yeah, but probably with enough time and enough patience, right? And if you look at what companies are doing, they take it very seriously. Now, you would really see things like this here, where you have a couple of inputs, and out of it generates everything, like the Instagram Reels, the videos, the YouTube, the TikToks, the everything, literally with a click of a button. Now, that's quite impressive, but that's just generative AI. We're kind of used to this. We know that generating video is easy, generating audio is easy, generating images is easy. That's great. But what about experts? Well, experts also have other tools now. This is a tool that's called INO, which is specifically designed for GIS experts, people who need to understand the geography, kind of map out things and so on. So you do have a conversation on the left, have the output, which is visual, right, on the middle, and then you also have data layers on the right. So when we look at it, this is just regular, good, old-fashioned UI, because you have buttons and filters and search. Have we forgotten about this incredible stuff that's called filters? Why is it that when you go to ChatGPT, it tells you, ask me anything? The problem is people don't know what to ask. And even if they think they know what to ask, they don't know how to ask for it. And even if they think that they know what to ask and they know how to ask for it, they often forget important details. They have to go in cycles, repeating this hell of going back and forth in these conversations, right? And it takes too much time. So let me give you just an example to make it a bit more contextual. This is a form, right? But what is interesting about this is the workflow that went into this. Again, the first rule of thumb is we do not write prompts anymore. That's just very inefficient. Instead, I was working with a designer, and she said she never writes prompts. But how do you then work? Well, she does something very simple. So when you look at this here, this is Figma Make. I don't even see the cursor here, but it's somewhere, right? The point is, she gets a task, and she spends time reading through this, design brief and something like that. And then she sits down, opens Loom, records the video of the brief, talks to the machine, right? What she thinks she should be doing, how she would approach this, and then she sends it to ChatGPT to generate a prompt that would then be used in Figma Make to generate a first prototype. So she does that, and so if you go all the way up, is there like a, can you see anywhere? No, okay. Anyway, so if we go all the way on the top, you'll find quite detailed, really detailed prompt. Would you be able to write a prompt like this? Probably not, right? So then she gets something. This is version 22 that you get here, right? Then she sees something. She goes in, sits down, takes a cup of coffee, opens Loom, records a video of her speaking to the camera about what she thinks about the prototype and how it should be adjusted and refined. And then she generates text out of that as a prompt, sends it back to Figma Make. After 1 hour, she transformed a 26-page PDF, 26 pages PDF, into a form that looks like this, right? And of course, this is just a prototype, right? And of course, it's broken in many places, so if you actually start going in, this is not a nice layout and so on, right? But getting in 1 hour, kind of really with all these dependencies kind of find out, that's actually quite impressive, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that we often, again, forget, is this really notion of maybe we need to give people some sense of structure when they're filling in the form, right? So when they actually start prompting. How? So this is size space. For some reason, it's also called typeset. I'm not quite sure which one is the right one. But it has one little thing that is very helpful. And that's, first of all, giving people structure around the prompts and the way of how they would write it. So you basically have the structure which says, well, tell me what you want to do. So I want to using something and make something out of it. So maybe you want to generate a diagram, so it pre-writes a prompt for you, because why would a human ever write this, right? And then you want to say, well, I want to have some specific sources I want to use, maybe like Google Scholar, so it writes it for you. And then I want to generate something like, I don't know, data visualization out of it. Boom, right? And one thing that's a bit annoying is that it always scrolls you up and it changes the text instead of helping you construct it and build up on top of that. But this is infinitely faster and also more accurate than a human would normally do. Now, why am I showing this now? For a very simple reason. Because when we look at what is happening, how people actually experience AI, this excitement that we had back in the day has sort of been disappearing. We have this very strange thing that we observe in testing and research all the time. And that's when somebody tells you that this feels like it's AI generated, it's not a praise. It's kind of a symbol of cheap, fast, maybe unreliable, maybe even confusing. Here's a simple test. Like maybe there is a pharmacy near the place where you live. Is there a pharmacy? I hope so, right? So there is a pharmacy. So you walk in the pharmacy. I really like these chairs, by the way. You go in the pharmacy, and then this is a pharmacy that you've been using for a while. And you go in, and they have these new posters that they designed and put out, right? And these posters have people in them. But these people are not real people. You can tell. Do you have a smell for AI? Can you smell that something is not right? Anybody? Yes, so you see, you are going there to the pharmacy, and then you see this poster, right? And you feel like, these people, they're not real. They're kind of AI generated. Would it change your attitude toward the pharmacy? So who would say, that's great. There should be more of that, like AI posters of people everywhere? I think not a single person. Okay. Would somebody say, well, maybe I should reconsider my choices when it comes to pharmacy and look around? Does it have a negative impact on you? Anyone? Who would say, whatever, who cares? If anything, they just save money. Right? Okay, so that's fair. So different people have very different perception of it, but the level of excitement we had is kind of long gone, right? And so this is sort of a testament often how poor and untrustworthy it is. In fact, there is research showing that the mere presence of the term AI can trigger fear, doubts, concerns, and even reduce conversion, despite advanced AI capabilities that you bring in. This is so funny because I'm working with different companies, and very often you end up with shipping an AI feature and people use the product less. You don't want that, right? Another thing that happens, people ship AI features and retention is ridiculously low. After 3 or 4 months, it's just 2 or 3%. You spend all the money and resources into producing something that nobody uses. That's very strange. Do you know why this happens? Usually because of fragmentation. So we have a situation maybe where an enterprise has data, sensitive data of the customer, but people are very concerned of giving AI full access to that sensitive data. So they give it just enough to be more or less meaningful. So then employees have to go in, and when they do the work, they go in and they use AI partially to find answers faster and whatever, but then they still need to go to the old system, which has all the sensitive data that they need to use as well. And then they bring stuff from here, from AI, they bring stuff from here, non-AI, they copy-paste it all in a big chunk of file, and then they plug it in a public service like ChatGPT to summarize it for them. This is not how it should be. Who does this magical thing? Where you get the output from AI, and then you think, this is good, useful, copy, and you copy-paste it in a separate workspace, Notion, Google Doc, or something else, and then you copy-paste all the stuff that you have copy-pasted already back into AI to summarize it for you. Who does that? Okay, maybe a few people do, right? So this is kind of a really strange thing that we invented, right? And then, of course, if you look around also, And you will see where I'm going with this. We have all these tools that have been propagating because people get stuff, AI stuff from everywhere, and they want to check if it's AI stuff. So a lot of times they would be checking, AI detector. But then, of course, we are inventive creatures, right? Well, like you remember the times where everybody started using ad blockers, so there was a fight of anti-ad blockers movement, right? Until there was an anti-ad blockers movement coming in. So, of course, there is also stealth GPT, which takes the output of AI, adds some errors and mistakes, removes em dashes and stuff like that to it, right? And makes it feel more like human. So we kind of have AI-generated content that pretends to be human written. So strange. And the reason, by the way, why people are so confused, and I would really say confusion is the biggest part of it, is because of stuff like this. That's nice, right? You walk around, go to the bus stop, and you are not important anymore. Let's just stop hiring people. People are the worst. AI employees, that's the time, finally, to move to AI employees. And of course, if you look around, well, AI employees don't complain about work-life balance, which is probably true, right? But also, they're just so much cheaper, right? They don't come in hangover, right? They never burn out. They work on holidays, like actually 24/7, and so much cheaper, just, people. You can forget about people. So that's really just weird and fearing. Like, it's not nice, right? But then you also go to LinkedIn, right? And on LinkedIn, every single day, nobody stops sending you messages about this is the prompt you need to master. You need to learn and tattoo that structure on your shoulders and use it every single day until the end of times. And I'm wondering, what the hell? Why am I supposed to learn this? Isn't AI intelligent to be able to do that on my own? I mean, it says so on the title, AI, right? So it's supposed to be intelligent. Why should I memorize it? Do we expect every single person on the planet to memorize this and use it then? Also, because then, just 5 minutes later, somebody posts, oh, no, forget about that. AI prompt engineering is dead. You don't need to do prompt engineering anymore. Why? Well, because there is research showing that if you ask a language model to create its own optimal prompt for your intent, for your task, in almost every single case, automatically generated prompt performs, in terms of quality of the output, way better than the best prompt found through trial and error, right? So should we learn prompt engineering? Should we not learn prompt engineering? It becomes really, really messy. And this also brings us to this really interesting story. We expect to be productive, and we are in the beginning, but if you actually look long term, the productivity is not necessarily really increasing. I mean, this is probably an exaggeration, right? So with AI, you're getting really, really very productive in the beginning, but to get it to the point where it's actually shippable, can be shipped in the product, that takes quite a bit of time. As a result, sorry that I'm kind of running through this, 700 slides I mentioned. So if as a result, we get this rise of what people call AI work slop. Has it happened to you? That you received something that looks like it's AI generated, and it was so bad you can tell, and now you have to clean up? Right? Here we go, right? So it's employees who use tools to create low-effort, passable work that ends up creating more work for their coworkers. Sorry about the coworkers. So what is the result? The result looks very strange. If you look into testing and into research, this is what people say about AI. They say, well, AI, weird. It suddenly imagines things when I don't understand why. It assumes things. It forgets things as we keep going in the conversation. It also changes its mind if I'm authoritative enough. It says what I want to hear. It often takes too long to reply, and if it replies, it's also too verbose when replying, right? Its quality declines over time, especially in longer conversations, right? And if anything, it actually amplifies some averages and mistakes, forgetting about the outliers. Doesn't really listen to me, never questions me, never asks me for missing details. And that's a big problem here in enterprise. Isn't really reliable for work. That's a big blocker, I would say. If you actually want to rely on AI, that's a really big issue. And then some usual things. Ask me to type all the time, quickly hit the limit of my plan, response in big walls of text, like this one, and answers are very hard to manage, right? But kind of good enough to get started. So is this the state of AI in 2026? This is where we landed? Is everything solved and fixed? We're good to go? We can just go ahead and use AI and forget about everything? No. So this is when we need to start designing. And so this is why I don't think for a second that everybody who is sitting in this room will have nothing to do or have no work to do in the next couple of years, because somebody has to fix all of this, right? And so this requires some thinking. So I just want to run you through a quite quick case study to show how this works before I show a few more examples. Meet George. George is a fintech application that was designed by Erste Bank in Austria. And this is an assistant, an AI assistant, like many others. And they try to figure out a way to create a really useful, meaningful, valuable AI experience for their customers. So the starting point was, of course, this. Ask me anything, just anything you want. Whatever is on your mind, just ask me. There are 3 types of initiatives that most products are working on. First is, let's bring in executive summary or AI summary into this. Second is, let's have an AI assistant or AI chat, something like that. Third is internal automation. Who is working on any of those at the moment? Okay, so this is a very, very common use cases, right? So this is one of them, the AI assistant. So ask me anything. Great. So, and then we check what people are asking. So what are people asking? Well, good question. Basically, a lot of conversations will be around, I need to analyze my costs, I need to think about my investments, how do I save, maybe the kind of income versus cost on my account, help, card management, product information. So they prioritize, and they choose the 2 that they believe are the most valuable for the customer. Analyzing the costs and income versus cost. Great. So let's bring it in. Let's just pick a model and bring it live in our product. And so that's what they did. So you get this, right? Easy, not a problem. And somebody would ask, how much did I spend last weekend? So you need to give them an answer, right? I mean, this is how it usually works, right? You need to give them an answer. So how would that work? Okay, so when does it start? So when somebody asks, how much did I spend last weekend? What do they mean? So they ask today. Today is what, Thursday? I think, I'm not sure. So they ask, well, how much did I spend last weekend? What is the time frame that we're talking about? So Friday night to Sunday night? So does it differ depending on what they buy? So if they buy pharmacy on Friday night, is it still weekend spending? So if they buy, depends on the, very good, depends on the pharmacy. So if they buy popcorn, does it count as weekend spending? Right? If they buy a laptop, does it count as weekend spending? That's where people disagree. So even little thing like this creates an enormous complexity, because a lot of stuff is hidden in between these few words. So you need to be really, really careful about how to interpret it. So one thing we know for sure, right? If we look at this, if people are asking, Saturday and Sunday probably will be included, for sure, right? So if somebody buys then, let's say, popcorn on Friday night, that probably will be included as well, right? But then, of course, you're buying something, let's say, on Saturday, but you know from your experience that sometimes it will be booked on Monday, right? And you might have a situation where that particular Friday was a bank holiday, right? So you need to account for all of these scenarios. When somebody just asks how much money they spent last weekend, it's becoming actually a very, very difficult question to answer correctly all the time, right? Without, again, kind of disappointing or frustrating the user. So this is just an example that when we actually go into this, right, we need to be very, very careful, because people are very, very bad in articulating what they want, or what they need, or what they want to find out, right? So let's keep going here. So we kind of consider that, and we do a lot of work to make sure that we cover these cases, right? And then we need to provide something. So usually, most AI products, including yours, I think, would have something like this. Little thinker, right? It's a fancy new loading button, so to say, right? And the first intention was, well, we need to confirm that we understood, right? So they would say something like, well, you're interested in your spendings from last weekend. Great, what a wonderful question that is. You are amazing. What a good stuff that you're bringing up here. So important at this point to think about those things ahead of time. You are on fire. And by the way, let me take a look into this, right? And so just a second. So this is a big blocker, and this is the cause of abandonment. Every single person who was using it well, not every single, but a lot of people actually really didn't like it, and they were jumping to another tab, to another application in between, and never came back. Abandonment through the roof, right? But what do we do then? Well, their ambition was 10 seconds faster. How can you be 10 seconds faster? Because you know, if you actually ask AI anything, unless it's like, give me 5 movies to watch tonight, it will take time. It doesn't come instantly, so you cannot have really real-time AI, generative AI, right? So how would you do that? So they started thinking about how they can make it work, because of course they need to keep people somehow engaged. So they started showing progress, right? To indicate we're looking up things, and this was the first outcome. You take naked, bare bones AI, you bring it in your product, you get this. How are we feeling about this experience? Nice, right? You have all the answers in the universe, right? In one single reply. Are we happy with this? No. So if you just take AI, don't design anything, you bring up an existing models, this is what you're probably going to get. Well, you could say, hold on for a moment, bullet points, this is so 2022, right? Yes, you're totally right. So the first thing we do, we remove bullet points, right? But of all the things, the entire answer, the most important thing is the number, right? Probably, but also the breakdown of it too. Plus, there are so many technical details that are totally irrelevant, actually. But by default, they will be showing up. So we need to clean up. Great. Well, the first thing we do is we remove bullet points. First step number 1, when it comes to AI, we remove bullet points. So we do that. Better? Excitement through the roof. I can tell you'll be using this product now forever. I can tell. Well, not great. Well, ultimately, we want to actually change it. Maybe move it towards something a little bit different. Maybe looking more like, hold on, this. Is this better? Okay, so it's like a very sign of relief coming in from the right. Excellent. Yes, so what would it take you as a designer, together with your engineers, to get here? From a very simple example that we're starting, just how much money did I spend last weekend? What would it take you to make this happen, right? Well, first of all, we need to understand what it actually requires, right? So if we have this, this is becoming a part of a design system that you'll be designing. So you need to identify intent that the user has, read between the lines, complete that intent in some way possible, right? And then you think about what other intents do people have, because they might need to have a different design. You can, of course, ask AI to design if you want, and there are some experiments around this as well, but typically it will look a little bit different, because you would start thinking about what are different types of intents and what would be the good design option for us to work on to make this happen. So this is another component, right? It has its percentages as well. You might have the gauge here, right? And so on and so on and so on, right? And kind of create a design system based on intents that the users have to create these different components that you then will be surfacing. But then what happens under the hood? So if you want, again, to make this happen over here, how would you make this work? Well, the thing is, you cannot just leave it to AI because it will be too slow. Generative AI will be way too slow. So they had to create the mapping between the intents that users have and the different ways of how they can describe it into something much more technical, which is then the non-AI part. So they would translate that intent in some way into, where do we get the data from? Because you don't want AI to just hallucinate on the data. You want to get the right answer. So there would be the transactions. You need to get the transactions about energy, because it's compare my energy cost from last year to this year. That's a relatively simple prompt. And then you have transactions, right? 24, 25. Easy peasy, you go to the backend, you get this data, you study or analyze that data. You can use AI for this if you want as well. And then you render that component depending on the intent and that data. It's not AI that renders it, it's just regular React application that just goes in and just renders it, basically doing what you're supposed to do. So how much of AI is it then? Right? Basically, AI is then used only to understand the intent, translate whatever it is that maybe like there's a conversation going, and that's pretty much it. There are 3 reasons for that, actually. First of all is speed. I think that we often underestimate the notion and importance of speed, because AI can be remarkably slow. That depends, of course, of how you design and implement it, but that's a separate story. Speed is one. Cost is another. If you run everything through AI, you're burning tokens, and you're going to pay for it. I mean, I don't mean it in an aggressive way, like you're going to pay for it. No, somebody's going to pay for it. Right? Third, it's just really much better experience because it's always accurate. You can never get to, let's say, like more than 95% accuracy most of the time when we're dealing with AI. Does that make sense, everyone? But what can we then do with that? Just 5 more minutes to really bring it to life, so to say. There are a few things I want to highlight which I think is really, really important. One of them is the notion about where AI actually lives. And that's the notion of scaffolding or layout, like literally like 5 more minutes, right? Because AI can live in many places. We often think that it's kind of a chat box, right, where you can type into. It doesn't have to be. I mean, there are many, many, many different options. Now, obviously, in terms of UI, you could have it in a canvas, in a table, assistant left and right, overlays, widgets. There are plenty of options, right? But there are also some that we often don't think of, which can be very, very powerful. Like, for example, let me just give you a sense of it, this. So this is a tool that's called Dovetail. It's a tool for researchers. And you basically have a journey where people, researchers, can upload files. They probably will need to anonymize it. They will probably want to review transcript from user interviews. They will look into data and categorize it, add highlights, cluster, create insights, and then report and send it out. So what they did was actually quite interesting because they looked at the existing journeys and specifically the points where people waste time and things that they can automate. Very simple. And the result was like this, right? So you basically have a view, and then it automatically generates that summary. Fine, that's not a problem. Everybody can do that. But then, if you want to translate from one language to another, sure, you can do that. AI is very good at this. Is it telling you that it's AI anywhere? No. Just automation. Fine. And then as you keep going, you might want to kind of identify some specific insights that are relevant. AI can do that. But instead of saying, hey, I found an insight, it tells you, hey, can you check, is it meaningful or not? You can reject it, can accept it, you can accept or reject everything. It also can, of course, cluster things. So instead of you going in and clustering things and tagging, it does it for you. But you are always in control, right? And then whenever it finds any personal or private sensitive information, it actually prompts a prompt saying, hey, do you want to redact that or things like that? It also will find some insights, like really going through the script and saying, I think, well, AI says, I think Emily indicated convenience and quality are important to her. Can you please confirm? Again, the human in the loop. But then, what's really impressive here is that they go to the detail, like the level of detail, to say, actually, we shouldn't have a lot of people coming to Dovetail. Dovetail should come to people, meaning they integrate everywhere where the work happens. It's so strange that we got used to this paradigm where you have a separate assistant on the left or on the right that you have to talk to and then bring that stuff from that conversation back into your workflow. It should be the opposite way, where you do the work and AI is available when you need it. So you can have a conversation with AI in Slack, in Teams, in Notion, and so on and so forth, right? But then comes a really magical part, which I didn't include. Oh my God, this cannot be. Just a moment, everyone. Oh, this is disappointing. This is the highlight of everything. How could I drop it? No. I was very worried for a moment. So we shouldn't really try to stretch the boundaries. So this is like, again, what integration looks like. So you type in something like, hey, Dovetail, give me a digest about what happened last week. Sure, that's easy. AI can do that. That's not a problem. But then what's really interesting to me about this, we can really change the mode of interaction with it. You can say, I want to get insights from customer feedback sessions. Great. And usually, how would it work? Newsletter, reminder, something like that. Well, we are living in times where a lot of things are now possible, especially in the world of generative AI. So what if you say, I want, a podcast? Wouldn't it be nice? Every Friday night, you get a podcast with clips from customer insights, put right in your Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever it is they're using. You don't even have to look for it. That's nice, right? On the other hand, also, kind of related to that, we really can go quite far. I know that I'm just running through this here, but I just want to show one short video here explaining where it actually can make a difference. This is coming from a big update from Shopify and from last year, and I was quite impressed by that. So let's see.
Voice chat and screen share. Working with Sidekick feels as natural as having a trusted colleague on speed dial 24/7.
Hello, I am here to help you with any Shopify questions you have.
Sidekick, can you help me set up my domain?
I can certainly help with that. In the Shopify admin, do you see settings in the left-hand side?
Yes, I see it.
Great. In settings, can you see domains?
Yes.
You can connect your domain by selecting Connect Existing Domain.
Awesome. Thanks, Sidekick. That was easy. Think of Sidekick as your business.
It's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but if you think about the speed of interaction, this is quite impressive. Because if you actually had to type it all in assistant, in a text box, and then navigate between the different pages, this would be taking so much more time. Here, you initiate a call. This is not like you're calling somebody, right? This is a call with a system that is in front of you, and it's aware about where you are and where your mouse pointer goes. So it can guide you and tell you, no, that's not quite like that. It should be more like this or like that. So you could say, but hold on for a moment. Why should AI even do that? Shouldn't it just pre-fill everything for you? Well, sometimes you just don't have the data yet. You need to ask people for passport number or anything like that as well. So they need to type in, but they need to do it properly, right? Little things like this are really going into quite a lot of detail here. So I could go forever, but I think I'm being told that I have 0,0,0,0,0 time. So I'm going to just jump all the way to down here and just wrap up. I think in all of this, just one thing I want to mention, there is an incredible amount of hype around AI, and I really always try to push back. Because ultimately, we know for sure one thing. A lot of people don't use AI or don't use AI well enough, right? Not because they're bad or they don't know what they're doing, but because the experiences we're creating are not optimized for helping people be more efficient with it. We just think that people will be more efficient with it. It doesn't work this way. And the value of any technology really lies not in itself, but in the impact it produces. And I see so many people who are so frustrated with AI because they feel like it does the job, but not fully. So they have to then see what is wrong and what is right, and it takes time. And it's not a pleasant work. It's not a creative work. It's cleaning up work. Nobody wants to clean up. And so AI features that you might be launching will not be necessarily useful or helpful or have high retention if they are not meaningful enough. With this, I want to just show you a little video on the story of my life again, kind of to make a full circle, because this has been something that I've been exploring now for a while. And every single time I look at it, it feels like the world around us, the AI world around us, is unsatisfying. So maybe this is your world as well. So if you can also turn on the music. That's AI every single time. For designers, well, sometimes, often, things don't go as expected, but we have to try, we have to clean up. So, thanks Propeller Studio for the wonderful video. With this come cats, and more cats, and also I just put together a little video course on this, just in case you're curious. Just remember WUD as a coupon code for that, doesn't matter. And thank you so much for being here, and I hope that it was useful. Oh, so hold on. Okay, so just in case.
Thank you very much. We have a few questions from the audience as well.
Shall we sit down? I really feel very comfortable
here. Let's try.
Sure. Excellent.
All right. So one of the guests asked, how can AI-generated content be presented so it reassures users instead of increasing hesitation?
Can I show?
Yeah, sure. Let's go back. Well, the sitting is for the panel anyway.
Yeah, that's good. So there are ways, very simple ways, that are just not there. So I'm allergic to 4 things. That's what I mentioned yesterday. I really have to mention that. I'm allergic to shellfish. I'm allergic to peanuts. I'm allergic to customer journey maps, and also to ChatGPT. So I cannot use ChatGPT. I tried very, very hard. I cannot. And I cannot understand why ChatGPT is like ChatGPT 3 years later. But this is how it should be. So if you look at something like Elicit, Elicit is just one of the many tools to do research and search and stuff like that. So if you go in and you, let's say, jump in one of those things here, right? So it does research, it takes a bit of time, right? It shows you sources, it shows you how it screens sources. You can also edit those sources. You can also point out which data you find useful and which not, right? And then what you have on the left are these asterisks, right? What are these asterisks, everyone? Yes, sources, mentions, citations. When you think about this, for 20 years, we've been taught that it's a good idea to search something, then you get lists from Google. Remember blue links we had? Right? Back in the day before AI. You click on links and then you explore, right? Then we said, wow, wonderful, AI. And if aliens ever came to the planet, they'd be very confused. Because then we came with AI and we said, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to give people the answer, and then they can click on those things and explore sources. Why would we do this to people? Instead, what we do here is different. You click on it, you get to a specific portion of that output that contributed to that statement, right? And you can also navigate through different papers, right? This is the same paper, but usually you would navigate between different papers, and both of them or all of them would be highlighting what is happening. That's really, really useful and very important. And another example that I think is right noticeable, just to show it, is this. This is consensus application. I'm very annoyed by ChatGPT. You can see that I'm very annoyed by ChatGPT. I'm very annoyed by ChatGPT always giving me the answer, right? It's always like it knows for sure if it's yes or no. The reality is much more complex than that. So what we actually need is a distribution of answers. So maybe something that looks like this. 40% of papers agree, 60% of papers disagree, and 9 don't have an opinion or something, right? So we need much more than like this, than just, what a great question you're asking, and here's an answer, right? So I think that this, if anything, this kind of builds trust, right? But it also is a very, very long process as well.
Great. Another thing, do you have any tips on how to convince government organizations to invest more in innovation?
I think that when it comes to innovation, to me at least, the point of it is to bring in something positive and valuable into the world, right, or into the place, right, in the country. And I think that efficiency is an important part that is really, really can be affected. We just haven't seen it really used at scale. So you can really increase GDP, right, and just economy in general really boost it if people happen to be much more efficient, right? And frankly, I'm an e-resident of Estonia, so I'm very comfortable with the services in Estonia as well, right, compared to other places where I lived. So this is really, really nice. And I think it, in many ways, really getting to the point where you start feeling like there is a time and there is the will as well to support companies, small and large. This is something that I really felt personally very supportive and very helpful. And again, so I don't know if this is an answer, but this would be kind of my take on this.
Another one just came in. What about the all-in-one AI platforms?
Well, there are some general purpose platforms, but there are not that many. I mean, the chances are very low that you're going to work on something like this. If anything, I have more trust in Anthropic than anyone else, if I'm being honest. I do use Gemini on my own, just in case you're wondering. But Anthropic is probably like, I don't know if you've heard, Anthropic has a Claude Constitution, which is like 35 pages long way of really trying to make sure that AI is doing what it's supposed to do. It doesn't feel to me like many other companies are trying to do the same. And given that the CEO of Anthropic is actually coming from science, I think he's a biologist by trade, right? Really trying to solve cancer and other things, I'm actually quite hopeful there. Also looking at the things that are coming in from Claude Code and so on, very, very impressive. So my bets are on Anthropic.
Good. The questions keep popping in. I promise I will forward them all to Vitaly, but let's give them a big round of applause to him. Thank you very much.